the Italian Football Podcast.
If we could just move on to Juventus now, who are playing on Monday evening, so we're recording this before the match. Thiago Motta's future is very much at risk now after the Coppa Italia defeat to Empoli in last midweek. I mean, it's a humiliating exit, and they're playing against an Empoli team who played virtually their entire reserves, and not even their reserves in some cases. They played some of the kids, and Juventus only managed a 1-1 draw, and then they lose on penalties. And the mood has definitely changed with regards to Thiago Motta now. He was obviously already under a lot of pressure because of how bad this season has been, but more so since the exit to PSV in the Champions League. But after this defeat to Empoli, an Empoli team that are in horrific form, near the bottom of Serie A, with their backups playing, that has changed the mood. And now the Italian media are pretty much unanimous in reporting that Motta really does risk the sack at the end of the season, even if Juventus finish in the top four. There is the chance that he might not be retained for next season. And we're seeing Gazzetta dello Sport have been very hot on this, and they have good contacts at Juventus now. That Juventus's shortlist of potential replacements are Gian Piero Gasperini, Antonio Conte, Roberto De Zerbi, Roberto Mancini, and an outsider is Igor Tudor. And Igor Tudor would only be somebody that they would bring in if things really go to shit in the next few games and they want to bring in a caretaker until the end of the season. They bring on Tudor, who obviously is Juventus through and through from his playing career, and he's been an assistant at Juventus as well. He would only be considered as a caretaker, not for the long term. Whereas the other managers that I mentioned there would be those that are being considered for next season. Gasperini, like you said, has said that he might leave at the end of this season at Atalanta. Conte, watch this space as always with Antonio Conte.
You never know.
You don't know. If they don't win the Scudetto, he's going to blame.
Well, he could leave even if they win the Scudetto.
He could leave if they win the Scudetto and think, I can't take this team further. If they don't win the Scudetto, we'll know.
He can also say the same thing as well.
He's going to blame them for January.
He's going to do, Conte could leave. If you win, let's remember this is a man who left Inter and Juve after winning Juve 3 Scudetti and Inter 1 Scudetto in first in 11 years. So Conte could leave regardless. It depends on how the wig is sitting.
Yeah. And De Zerbi is somebody that fits in with, I guess, the kind of plan that they had with Motta in terms of younger players developing sustainable and also hopefully entertaining, kind of more proactive football. So he fits in there. Mancini is obviously looking for a return to Serie A.
Mancini is the obvious choice, though. I mean, to me, it's everything else is, unless Mancini doesn't want to and they can't find an agreement.
Mancini would definitely want it. I don't know whether Juventus would consider him the top choice. I think he's more of a...
Well, the thing with Mancini, you talk about youth. Roberto Mancini has a fantastic track record of developing young players at club and international level. You talk about a player, you talk about a coach who's used to being at the top level, who's used to winning, who knows how to handle big players, big personalities, who knows what it takes, both as a player and as a coach, to be at the top level. He ticks every single box. The only question I have is, can he... We've seen Mancini 1.0 be very successful. We've seen Mancini 2.0 at City in Italy be very successful. Does he have it in him to rejuvenate himself for a 3.0? Because that's what's going to take for him to succeed at Juve. Or again, at club level. But for me, if you look at man management, youth development, being able to handle big characters, being able to build a dressing room, being able to deliver under pressure, out of those lists, there is only one man, and that's Roberto Mancini. That ticks every single box.
Well, I think there's a few things that they're looking at here. Do they continue with the project that they've started, the Giuntoli project, let's call it that, of buying younger players, making it sustainable, developing players, and playing a certain style of football. If that's the case, then yes, I think Mancini could fit into that. But there's also Gasperini fits into that, and De Zerbi fits into that. So those are probably
the
the
difference
choices.
that Gasperini cannot get along with anyone and throws hissy fits, and we've seen it throughout his career.
The thing, yes, there's that issue. We discussed that last week, didn't we, about kind of his drawbacks of Gasperini. But there's also something that they consider in Juventus, which is, do we want to go for someone with that understands the Juventus environment? And in that case, you've got Gasperini, who was a youth coach at Juventus for a long time, for around a decade, I think, in the 90s and in the early 2000s. So he knows the environment. And then, of course, there's Antonio Conte, who's Juventus through and through as a player and then as a coach. But if you hire Antonio Conte, and that would obviously be reliant on him, like Gasperini leaving his current club, you're not going to get, the project changes, doesn't it? You can't build you're going to have to change the project. Do they want to do that? Do they want a guarantee? If they want more of a guarantee, then you go Antonio Conte. So there's lots of things to consider there. But as it stands right now, we have to say that Motta has really 2.5 months to save his job. Number one, he needs to get Juventus in the top 4 to qualify for the Champions League. That's non-negotiable. If he doesn't get in the top 4, he's 100% sacked. If he gets in the top 4, not only does he need to get into the top 4, he needs to prove a couple of things. He needs to prove that the team is making progress on how they're playing, performance levels. Because I actually think that even though Juventus, again, we're recording this before the Hellas Verona game, even though Juventus have gone on a kind of a 4-game winning run in Serie A, which is their best run of the season, I think that we've actually seen the guarantees of Motta from the first half of the season disappear, i.e. the possession. They're not dominating possession in games. The defence is not solid anymore. So those were the two things that we could guarantee from the identity. Let's say that's the only identity that we had from Motta. We've lost that now as well, and that's obviously shown by the fact they've lost in 2 cups during that winning run. So we need to see some kind of identity. We need to see some kind of performance levels being improved. That's number one. And then number two, and this is probably most concerning, is there's been lots of reports of problems with a few players at Juventus. They don't like, he's not getting on with a few players. They haven't named who these players are, but there have been suggestions: Dusan Vlahovic, Toon Koopmeiners, Cambiasso. That's been one that's been lingering for a while now. So we don't know for sure who they are and how bad it is, but as we've always said, and it's the first rule in football with a manager is, if as soon as you lose your dressing room or you lose four players, that's it. That's it.
Over.
So,
but I don't think Vlahovic stays past this season, and I'm not entirely certain that even Cambiasso stays past this season. We'll have to wait for financial reasons, for completely separate reasons.
But the point is that if he hasn't got the changing room, he's so Juventus are going to be monitoring that basically to see.
I'm looking at Juve like this. I think that if they after the Atalanta game are within 6 points of the top spot, they're not going to sack him.
After the Atalanta game.
After the Atalanta game.
Well, they're not going to sack him now. They're not going to sack him now, but there'll be 10 games left of the season.
That's what I was going to say. If they are within 6 points of the Scudetto, of the Serie A, of the top spot, after the Atalanta game, they're not going to sack him now. But if they lose to Atalanta and draw against Hellas, I think they sack him already now. They're just going to cut their losses, I think.
I think
1 point in 6 out of, when you look, Juve is a very special club in the sense that it's the only thing that matters is to win. Everything, and I mean that in the literal sense, not the figurative sense. Everything else is secondary. If they can find themselves after this shit season somehow in a Scudetto race, and they make a serious push, I think there's actually a chance that even at the end of the season he continues on. But if at Juve you can't capitalize on the weakness of the opponents, that's in Juventus's self-image. If you can't do that, then you have no business being at Juve.
Yeah, I think there's a bigger problem at Juventus right now that goes above Motta. And I've been speaking to a few people over the last few days since the exit to Empoli, and I've been told that there are real problems higher up the club. Some of them, I think we know, were quite apparent. The fact that a lot of different departments, we've been speaking about, a lot of different departments are underperforming, not just on the pitch, not just the manager, but you've got the medical department that's completely failed this season. Just look at the list of injuries, the number of ACLs, and some of this predates this season. Obviously, a lot of it does. The number of injuries, even now as we speak, look at the number of defenders that Juventus have out currently right now. It's absolutely insane. The commercial department is failing. I mean, look, they didn't even get a sponsor this season, which is just embarrassing. The recruitment department has failed this season. Just look at the money that was spent last summer. The three biggest signings, 140 million euros worth of players in Cup Miners, Douglas Luiz and Nico Gonzalez that have all been flops this season. And then you go higher up to obviously Elkan and I mean, what does he even do? So that we've spoken about already. But I've been told that there is just no synergy at all between the different departments. That the people that are heading up these different departments within the club, with the titles, they're not even reporting to anyone. How during the time of like Andrea Agnelli, for all the kind of mistakes that he made at the end of his time at Juventus, which he then paid for, that at least you had somebody who was very passionate, that loved Juventus, that wanted them to win, that every decision he made, good or bad, right or wrong, was in the interest of trying to make Juventus win. And everybody reported to Agnelli. Everybody knew that they had to do a job and do it well, because otherwise Agnelli would, or Agnelli's people would hold them responsible. How at the moment at Juventus, there's nothing. Everybody's just doing, every department is just doing what they want with no synergy, and nothing is tied together, which is the recipe for disaster in any corporate organisation. Let me tell you that, as somebody that that's worked in most people listening to this will have worked in a corporation. That if your different departments that you have within your organisation are not working together, and it's just a mess. It's a complete mess. An example, just to give you a very minor example this week, you've got Cristiano Ronaldo who's suing Juventus basically for unpaid money. And the social media team are posting lots of doing social posts bigging up Ronaldo and how amazing he was at Juventus and the king and the GOAT and all this kind of stuff. And that's just a minor example. It might not mean much, but it just shows how there's no, that would never happen if Agnelli was in charge. Put it that way. That this is just the chaos that there is at Juventus, and I think that that obviously, if you've got an organisation that's not being run well, it makes it very, very difficult to win on the pitch. And it kind of poisons the whole environment. And it's the same thing that we've seen at Milan, which has been run obviously very, very badly. Manchester United for the last decade or more with the Glazers, that everything is such a mess structurally within these three clubs that it becomes very, very difficult. And the fans also at all three clubs, the fans are fed up. Juventus Ultras announced before the Verona game that they're gonna boo the players, the coach, the management, and the leadership before and during the match against Hellas Verona. So it's just like these environments are very poisonous, very toxic. It's the same at Milan. And when that's the environment and that's just how the club is being run up above, it becomes very, very difficult on the pitch. And that's something I know that you spoke about a lot during the Allegri time. And maybe I underplayed that a little bit, but I think it's very apparent even now and there was supposed to be a change. It was supposed to be this would be the new project. Allegri goes, everything changes up above. And from what I'm hearing, the people I'm speaking to, it's still a mess.
Yes, it is still a mess. And I think that maybe the step up for Thiago Motta was a little bit too soon. I still think that he will have a good career. I think he's I think some people are just basically, I think the hype was exaggerated, and I think the critique is exaggerated. I think he will recover from this, and he will have a good career. I think he'll still have a top career. This is a setback, but I do feel that the only way that he stays at Juve beyond this season is if Juve can mount a challenge from now for the title from now until the end, because then you show the Juventus identity. Winning Scudetti you don't deserve to win, and I don't mean by any illicit things. I mean capitalizing on the weakness of your opponents. When they fail, Juve historically don't, and they win stuff they don't deserve to win because others are better, because they just stumble. That's what Juve want to see. That's the Juventus identity. That's part of the Juve's identity. And if he can mount a challenge and push Napoli and Inter to the wire, then I think he can stay. If he doesn't, if he gets one out of 6 points over the next 2 games, I think he walks in the international break. I think Tudor comes in as a caretaker coach, and I think the recruitment for next season begins immediately after that, because they have nothing to lose. I mean, they look at how it looks downwards the table. They're not too worried. They look at the games they've got left. They look at the games the others got left. They're in a good position.
I think they keep him unless if top 4 becomes a risk and they just need an injection.
There's only one international break as far as I'm aware, and now's the time to do it.
Well, yeah. I think it depends what the top 4 situation looks like, and if there is a risk of top 4 not falling away from the top 4, then they might they might bring in a Tudor just to give them injection, kind of like what he did last season at the end of the season with Lazio. Yeah. But if they look comfortable, if they're they open up a little lead on Lazio by the international break, I think they will keep him.
Yeah, that's what I mean, and that's why I think that's what I'm saying. If he doesn't if he's 6 points within the Scudetto at the when the international break starts, he finishes the season. If he can mount a challenge and push them to the wire, not necessarily win the thing, then he stays. But if he can't do any of those things, if he can't do the first thing, he's out by March. If he does the first thing but can't do the second thing, I think he's gone in the summer.